Hola, hola, muy buenas noches. My name is Mario Jose Pagan Morales. I am your friendly neighborhood Titeres poet. With me this evening is the illustrious, and without her, I couldn't do this, art director of the Titeres Poets, Isa Guzman. Isa, thank you so much. So, so for those of you guys who are asking, what is Cafre con leche? Yes, I said Cafre con leche. This is in itself our relaunch of our audio podcast, but as a video form. As many of you know, we have a podcast called Pan con Titeres. Thank you to everyone who's ever taken a second to listen to it. And that, with that tool, we were able to bring community together, bring poets together, and have very intimate conversations around poetry, family, mental health, and what we love most, comunidad. So in continuing with that tradition, we wanted to offer a new platform called Cafre con Titeres, Cafre con Leche, because I always mess up with the Titeres. So what is Cafre con Leche? Cafre con Leche is we get two poets together, we bring them together, we share poetry, we have conversations around that poetry, and very simply continue to offer a platform to not only Latinx poets, but everyone who loves poetry. So we're just gonna get right into it, and I would like to introduce our two features this evening. And I will start with my brother. El David is a poet, producer, and visual artist from the Bronx, New York, and Manhattan, Upper West Side, who now resides in Illinois. He's the author of poetry collections for Where I'm From, Growing Up Rican, Hip Hop Made, and The Outlaw of Poetry. He is the New York Taino Award 2017 Ariato Poet of the Year. As a producer, El has recorded and produced several albums as a solo artist, and as a director for world fusion band Machete Movement. He sang lead and played percussions with bomba groups Segunda Quimbamba and Cimarrones. His latest albums are Oreiki by Machete Movement and Still Got It El David. His written works have been published in the anthologies Bad Cop, Good Cop by Flower Song Press, What They Leave Behind, The Ice Colony, Mi No Hablo with Acento, edited by Emmanuel Javier, The Banda Public, Soft Skull Press, edited by Luis Reyes Rivera and Def Poetry Tramp co-founder Bruce George, and the August 2019 Acento's Review Performance of Breath edition, edited by Lupe Mendez and Peggy Robles Alvarado. He has featured at the National Black Theater with the Full Circle Ensemble, at the New York Poets Cafe, Governor's Island, the Bowery Poetry Club, the Bronx Museum for the Arts, Great Weather for Media, Teatro Latea, El Museo del Barrio, and many, many more. El is the founder of the Urban Beats Poet Society and co-founder of LCAT Productions, whose mission is to create platforms for writers and artists through workshops, performance, music productions, and publications. Els currently hosts the monthly video series, Chopping It Up with El David, where he interviews talented poets and writers and artists, and me, con ustedes, El David. Thank you for coming, El. Yes. Our next feature is our brother, Josiah Luis Alderete, who is a full-blooded Pocho Spanglish-speaking poeta and left-handed callejero de Aztlán, who has been a part of La Área Bahia's literary spoken word scene for over 20 years. He was a founding member of the outspoken word group, the Molotov Mouths, and is the curator and host of the long-running monthly Latinx reading series, Speaking Axolot. His book of poesías, Baby Axolots and Old Pochos, was published last year by Tungo Eisen Martin's Black Freighters Press. Currently, Josiah Luis tends the portal known as La Medicina para Pesadillas bookstore, where he's sitting right now in the back room, y Galería en el Corazón de la Misión, San Pancho Califas. Gentlemen, thank you for coming, for being here with us, for joining us. How's everybody doing? Again, Josiah, this is El David. El David, this is Josiah. I was very excited to have both of you here because your works mirror each other. You know,
Yeah, I
Josiah
know
and
why
I
you
have
did that.
had, yeah, Josiah and I have had conversations where part of Josiah's poetry, uh, you know, his journey as a poet, he mentions that, you know, he was inspired by the New Yorican scene. You know, Josiah, want to touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, El David, it's nice to meet you, even though it's only in the Zoom
You too,
Mundo.
man.
Real, real. No, I mean, I told Mario this story, you know, I think several times, but for me, you know, I did not see my cultura in any of the schools that I went to, you know, here. You know, it was like I basically went through my entire public education here in Califa, not reading or hearing of a Latinx poet or a writer or, you know, anything. So for me, I would end up, I spent a lot, I consider bookstores where I was educated because that's where I would go. You know, I was a reader. I just wasn't a reader in school because nothing that they gave me interested me. So
Right.
one day I was at City Lights Books. I was probably 15, 14. And that place was open till midnight. So I could sneak out the house and, go and hang out and read books up in the poetry room. And I pulled out a poet named Jimmy Santiago Baca. It was Martin and Other Meditations, the book. But that was my first encounter with a Chicano poet. And opening it up, I recognized myself. I saw myself. I saw something that was me, and it was un momento profundo, you know, for me. That I always think is one of them moments, man, in your life where this changes stuff. This makes you more aware, you know, expands you. And then 3 or 4 days later, I was in a car, and KPFA was playing the Reverend Pedro Pietri doing the Puerto Rican obituary. Yeah.
Right.
And I said, what's that? Who's that speaking Spanglish in a way? And man, I heard that, and it was again that same sort of feeling, you know, they're like, somebody showed you a bigger part of the sky, you know, and somebody's speaking this dialect that you connect with, that you recognize, and it's a brother from somewhere else. So for me, it was these two momentos. So I've always there's always been Jimmy Santiago Baca and the Reverend in mi corazón and in my poetry world, kind of what helped me break out and expand, you know. And then later Kaufman, Bob Kaufman, pero it was the two of them. So that for me, the Nuyorican, the Puerto Rican connection has always been sacred and something that I've, you know. And then years later, I discovered the Aloud anthology, you know, which again, there was so much in there that I felt connected to and grateful to be hearing, you know. So the Nuyorican have always been a dear part of my heart. I mean, aside from being Chingon poets, you know what I always say? I say the Nuyorican are the Jedi Knights of the Latinx poetry community. Man, y'all come in. It's truth. And it's the historia that I hear from y'all, you know, which is so, for me as a poet, a brown poet, a Latinx poet, we write not to just create beautiful art, but to preserve our cultura, our history, our memoria. And I much in the Nuyorican's work, and it's so touching and beautiful, you know. So that's, y'all have always had a special place in my heart, you know.
Oh man,
Appreciate that.
Yeah, man, that's beautiful. And you know, with El David, you know, we met that El David used to live in New York before, you know, we lost him to Illinois. You know, we had an opportunity to, I met El David right at the cusp of when he was leaving, you know, but prior to meeting him, El has a very, very deep legacy and foundation, you know, in New York, in the Bronx, and he has, you know, some of the Titeres poets come from that foundation. You know, D Bird and Vigo, you know, speak very highly of El David, we've had long conversations about El. But El, tell us a little bit about yourself, so that Josiah knows who you are,
Yeah,
what, where
likewise.
you come from,
And I got respect for all those guys too, as well as you, my brother. So yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
but first I want to say, my wife is Chicana, right? So when we started doing the El Cap productions in New York, that there was an influx of Mexicanos into El Barrio, right? And it's majority now Mexicano. But what we wanted to do with that influx was to make sure that we knew each other, right? Because what makes the people enemies, races that are the same, like a Dominican, Puerto Rican, Cuban, Mexican, is we don't get to learn each other, right? And the thing with Pedro Pietri's poem was it was not a Puerto Rican poem, although it was, right? It was the same thing that every other brown paper bag Latino was going through, right? So if you go to the hood of every Latino culture, you're going through the same thing, but because we just so identified with the pride in who we were, because we had to, because that was our armor against everybody who was trying to destroy us, we forgot to know each other. So I like that it actually, there's somebody to hear your story is really exciting to me, I want to say, because that's exactly what me and Kat was trying to work on right before we left. So yeah, and as far as when I said I know why you put us together, I began my big poetic movements as an activist poet. So when there was a poetry that had to be done for activism, I was usually there. I worked with Richard Perez of the Young Lords and Panama Alba. Charles Barron was my mentor from the Black Panthers, and I started doing nothing but revolution. My first book, which I don't even talk about, I don't even put out there anymore, was pretty much all political, right? And then after the Full Circle Ensemble, I started to delve into other things while still being true to what I believe in, and that became the motto of our production company, which was staying true to what moves the heart and soul. So everything we do now is to promote people, not for who they know or who they are, but as far as fame wise, but how good they are and can they move us, So can they move a people in whatever way or shape or form that their art is meant to do, if whether it be political, whether it be a love poem like Vanessa Chica, whether it be funny like Thomas Figueroa, right? Or deep mental. I kind of get into all that shit because I'm screwed up. So I have poems from all over the place, right? Because I started. I'm older than you guys, right? So I started to wanted to talk more about my other demons, and my other angels, So that's me in a nutshell. I was signed with a major label that I can't speak of because I did once and I got in trouble, that I broke out of, and I started just create my own music and pay myself and become a writer and a self-publisher to do what I want to do without any restrictions. So and I guess that's the ingredients of a rebel, right? So that's why I use the term outlaw of poetry. I break the rules.
Gotcha. That's beautiful. Like this is exactly why we came up with this new platform, because this is something I didn't know about you. Like I know you're we share a kindred when we speak about our poetry, because our poetry is very similar, but I had no idea that you started out as an activist poet. And that's extremely important. I sometimes want to go down that path and I get too caught up, and I'm an introvert and I get in my feelings and stuff. So I could see that, I could hear that. All right, so that's introductions again. So what I want to do is I one of the things that I wanted to do with these meetups is I wanted to speak about our poetry, and I find myself in a funny place because I never thought that I would be having these conversations when I was a baby poet. But what has been intriguing me lately is what has inspired our work, what speaks to us. Why do we choose the poets that we do? Because You know, if you ask me, and you know, who, like, a lot of people have always asked me, well, who do you read, and you know, who are your favorite
Mhm.
poets? And a lot of times I tell them, you know, a lot of the poets that I like and I follow aren't published poets. You know, they haven't published books. You know, and that doesn't mean that they're not successful at what they do. Is just, you know, some of the dopest poets I've known, you know, are some of my closest friends. So what I wanted to do, and I thank you for sharing these poems with us, was bring a poem that informs your work, or that inspired you to write, or you know, a poem that moved you. And I would like to start with Josiah.
Yeah. Uh, let's see here. So basically, I was talking earlier about that expansion that I experienced when I came across Baka and when I came across the Rev. Yeah. And, you know, like I was saying, that there's nothing for me. I mean, it's now with the bookstore too. There's nothing more beautiful than seeing yourself reflected on the shelves, seeing, you know, looking at a piece of literature, poesía, or writing, and seeing your cultura, or being able to recognize, you know, something. So that was what moved me so much about hearing Pedro Pietri and seeing Baka. You know, they kind of expanded my idea of what the universe was and what poetry was. See? Pero, the poet that showed me what was underneath that strange, like, unexplained place that is poetry too, you know, that I don't want to say spiritual, but it is. But it's that underbelly, and I mean it like underbelly in like a sleazy way. I mean like what's underneath, you know, Mixlan, if you will, you know. Bob Kaufman did that for me. I same room of poetry, City Lights. I pulled out The Ancient Rain, the book that New Directions published of his, and it's a really great picture of him with the poncho, sitting in Cafe Trieste, you know, leaning with a big hat. Looks like some crazy spaghetti western outlaw. Got the big bigot. But man, I read him and I read his writing, and it was like, you know, Baca and Pietri, they showed me what was there, you know. But Kaufman, I read it and I realized that there's something underneath. Like there's roots, there's magic, there's deep dark tunnels, you know. There's other. So he blew my mind, man, because I read him the first day and I was like, what is this? You know, it was almost like, I don't know, the first time I heard Ornette Coleman or some shit, you know, where I had to take a step back and listen. And it was the same thing with Kaufman. You read what he wrote, and sometimes you would be like, wait a minute, you know, let me like just, and that's what I did. Once I got him in me, I couldn't stop, you know. So I went from Ancient Rain, there was Solitude Crowded with Loneliness. Eventually I was able to track down a copy of Golden Sardine, which was the little pocket book that City Lights published to his. But one of the poems that really did it for me, that made me see that from him, was this one here. It's called I Too Know What I Am Not. No, I am not death, wishes of sacred rapists singing on candy gallows. No, I am not spore of Creole murderers hiding in crepe paper bayous. No, I am not yells of some assassinated inventor locked in his burning machine. No, I am not forced breathing of Cairo's senile burglar in lead shoes. No, I am not Indian summer fruit of Negro piano tuners with muscling gloves. No, I am not noise of two-gun senators in hallowed Peppermint Hall. No, I am not pipe smoke hopes of cynical chiropractors, traffickers in illegal bone. No, I am not pitch blend curse of Indian suicides in bonnets of flaming water. No, I am not soap powder size of impotent window washers in pants of air. No, I am not kisses tubercular sun addicts smiling through rayon lips. No, I am not chipped philosophers' tattered ideas sunk in his granite brain. No, I am not cry of amethyst heron, winged stone in flight from cambric bullets. No, I am not sting of the neurotic bee, frustrated in cheesecloth gardens. No, I am not peal of muted bell, clapperless in the faded glory. No, I am not report of silenced guns, helpless in the pacifist's hands. No, I am not call of wounded hunter alone in the forest of bone. No, I am not eyes of the infant owls hatching the roofless nights. No, I am not the whistle of Havana horrors with cribs of Cuban death. No, I am not shriek of Bantu children bent under penny whistle whips. No, I am not whisper of the African trees, leafy Congo telephones. No, I am not lead belly of blues, escaped from guitar jails. No, I am not anything that is anything I am not.
Nice.
Holy crap. Yeah, I could tell you that I had to read this poem like 6 times through because the imagery is crazy. You
Right?
know, like for me, like his word choices and you know, some of the, you know, some of these lines are like ridiculous. I know that for me, I'm not kisses of uh tubercular sun addicts smiling through rayon lips. You know, so Josiah, why this poem? Like, um, how does this inform your poetry? How did this continue to put you on this path that you know you've taken as a ocho poeta?
Well, Kaufman pushed me in directions reading his writing, right? So there was just like these ideas of like, you know, there's the Nahuatl belief, Descatlipoca, one of the, I don't use the word God because it's a bad translation. It's like the energía, the teoto. The teo was Tezcatlipoca in the Mexica cosmology was the smoking mirror. He was one of these energies that was, so basically he was us looking into ourselves, like reflecting. There's a form of meditation that a lot of the Mexicas did where they would actually stare into obsidian, you know, and see themselves, see their insides. But the smoking mirror was like sort of that content. And when I discovered Kaufman, that's kind of what he was for me. He was like a smoke that I would stare into. I would stare into his writing. And even though, you know, with Baca and Pietro, you know, they talking about the real world. You know, they talking about the injustices and the things that we feel every day in our neighborhoods, in our barrios, you know, the legacies of what we're dealing with. But somehow reading Kaufman for me, like it made me realize that the words were actually connected to these things. Like, I think I was still reeling from the idea of Baca and what they were writing and the idea of Petri with what they were writing. And I was just so amazed to be able to connect, you know, with these poets. But Kaufman was the one that because, you know, like you're saying, Maya, the lines are like, what? Like, you know, so you got to read them a couple of times. And the more you read them, it's like staring into that obsidian, into that smoking mirror. They start to unravel. Like, if you stare in that smoking mirror enough in that obsidian, that darkness starts to dissipate and you start seeing yourself and seeing things and seeing your ancestors and your corazon. And Kaufman's writing did that to me. You know, it became almost like a meditative thing, which in turn encouraged me to like connect my writing even deeper into my cultura, you know, because that's how I recognize my ancestors, is through my writing. And it was a process that I think Kaufman helped me begin, you know. It's like we could fly, but when someone actually shows us how to, it's pretty beautiful, you know. We know we can fly, but here comes this cat that's like, okay, this is what you do, you know. And all of a sudden we're fucking, you know, going up into a cielo like Remedios the Beauty and 100 Years of Solitude.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful thing. You know, what's funny about the poem to me was that I was really high when I wrote it, and I had to read it. The more I read it, and the more I read it, it's um, it's like coming from a really dark tunnel into the light, and you're like, yo, this dude is. I actually put him down. I have a notebook with a list of poets that you know, I want to look up and read, and his words are just like, after a while it becomes kind of hypnotizing, you
Yeah.
know, this poem.
Well,
And I was trying to, ¿cómo
the
fue?
tre- there's a tremendous rhythm to it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how knowing your work and being in space with you and, you know, stalking you on YouTube, when I learned about you, I after a while I heard the rhythm, you know, in Kaufman's poem, and you know, and in you, because tú tienes un ritmo when you read it. It's a little, it's very contagious,
Mm.
the way that you read your poetry. So I got it when I read this poem, like for the umpteenth time, and I was
Mhm.
like, yeah, I see why, you know, and so yeah, man, thank you for sharing that. You know, I would like to give it over to if anyone has anything to say, thoughts,
Yeah,
ideas,
so that
you know,
that
and
that
David, like,
yeah, that had rhythm. And what got me about that poem, like I mentioned, that I was mentored by Charles Barron and Brother Shep of the Black Panthers, and one of the trainings that they do is repetition. And so, you know, with the last poets, you know, that was part of, they were very big in the movement. And the Black social justice movement, and the poetry was big then. So what Charles Barron always taught us, and I when I used to do my revolutionary poetry, it was like the poem you just read, where the word no is hammered into your skull, and you repeat it. Yes, and you have to know. It makes you want to understand what he's protesting against, you know, and so Charles Barron, he actually became city council of Brooklyn, but he would train us to say our last two or three words again. So he would be like for example, the cliche, justice is just us, just us, just us. So he was like, this is what you, because in order, like Chuck D said, in order to get things through people's skulls, you have to be louder than a bomb. And
Mm.
the way to be loud,
mm,
and the way to be louder than the bomb is through repetition. So yeah, I like that piece. That reminds me of, you know, when I was doing that type of poetry back then. Yeah,
It's also the
awesome,
drum
bro.
talking through us, that
yeah,
repetition.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, I see. To me, I have a poem that says, "What is poetry?" And I say, "Poetry is the rhythm of imagination, dancing through the poet's soul to incite pleasure in the poet and anyone who deems the poetry to be right or true, whatever, something like that." Because I took too many drugs in my youth to remember all these old poems of my head. but 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 the thing is,
I think we all have that in common.
Yes, yes.
but yeah, rhythm, especially of a people rooted in indigenous cultures like African, Nawa, like you say, Borinquen, not the Native Americans, you know. So all these people are rooted in the drum. Drum is the heartbeat, and it's like in my faith, it's actually not just a heartbeat, it's actually, it talks, and it talks to you and you dance with it. So I appreciate that. So for me, I struggled with this. I really wrestled with this because I have, so I grew up in hip hop culture, right? So for me, I saw the beginning of it, I saw the middle, and then I'm still in there now, right? But I was very influenced by hip hop. My I was like, where do I really begin? Because my first experience with poetry, I was in the fourth grade, and this beautiful Hawaiian assistant teacher who I had a crush on was teaching poetry, and she taught us to do. I still remember, not all of it, but it was shit. I don't remember it, but it was a love poem a sonnet, right? And I did it because I was attracted to her and I wanted to impress her. And then after I wrote it, I was like, I really like doing this. So fast forward a few
How old were you?
I was
Super
young.
fresco?
I was in the, dude, I'm too old to know age. Like if you ask me, you ask me my birthday, I might forget. But I could tell you grades. I'm good at that. My wife was like, everything happened to you when you were 11. But I was, yeah, I'll do this. I was in the third grade. I was in the third
You were
grade when
9.
that teacher. I was 9. I
How
wrote my
much-
first
You
poem.
were 9.
Heavenly Father, bless my, I don't know, I can't remember. It was all, I put like harps in there and God and shit and a lot of stuff, but it was just to impress her. And she leaned over me, and I remember my hair, my pelitos going up like, holy shit, right?
Tú eres un fresco, bro. That's what you are.
So then fast forward, not too much further, right? Fast forward, I'm actually a cat from the hood that loves Barry Manilow. So all my friends would make fun of me, like, about that. I was actually going to cop a Barry Manilow album at a store called H.O. Green's. It's closed now. It was on 92nd Street in or 96, I can't remember, somewhere in the 90s in Manhattan. And they were out of it. But next to it was the Funkadelic album.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, let me check this out. And then there was that the Doodle Chasers by and in that was a poem, a spoken word piece by George Clinton, right? And a lot of people, they don't. He's a poet. A lot of people don't know that, right? So he spit some serious deep poetry about being the people to rescue them from the brainwashing of the government, right? And that's what that whole poem was about. He lit a fire under me. So the reason I struggled with who to pick was it him or was it Piri Tomas? Because when I was in high school, if I go fast forward even more, there was a writing contest of some sort in my high school where he came to judge it, and he loved my piece. He pulled me to the side and said, "And you're gonna be a great writer. Never stop. I want you to know that I really love the." It was a story about, actually just a true story about somebody dying in the hood, that you're close to, and the facts of the life being and growing up in the projects where somebody you're close to might eventually have to pass away through violence, right? That was the reality for me back then. So I had two pieces in mind, right? I had that, and then the piece from Pedro Pietri. But if we're gonna be honest, the fire was lit under me by George Clinton, because that eclectic poem, which is, it's hard. If I didn't explain it to you right now, what it was about, you probably be like, "What the fuck did you just say?" But yeah, so that's who it was for me, George Clinton. That was a mouthful, right?
All right. You want to read it for us?
Oh yeah. The pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad, the doo-doo chasers by George Clinton. The world is a toll-free toilet. Our mouths neurological assholes, and psychologically speaking, we're in a state of mental diarrhea. Talking shit a mile a minute, or in a state of constipated notions, can't think of nothing but shit. And in this world of stinky futures, shitty memories, and constipated 19 nows, emerges from the hiney of your head the doo-doo chasers, the pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad, the prune juice of the mind, the doo-doo chasers, friends of Roto-Rooter, bringing you music to get your shit together by, the band in the tidy bowl of your brain. What was that long word again? Pro-mental, a music bowel movement designed to rid you of moral diarrhea, social bullshit, crazy do loops, mental poots. They call us the unflushables. One swipe, a clean wipe. Go flush it, fellas. And what causes all of this shit? What is the source of food for thought? Ego munchies, images, doggy bags, me burger with eye sauce on it. Me burger with eye sauce on it. A myself sandwich, a personal hamburger, and a glass of constricted cola. Out to lunch with lunch meat. The fear of being eaten by the sandwich. The pro-mental shit backwash psychosis enema squad. the doo-doo chasers, friends of Roto-Rooter, music to clean your shit to, low-calorie logic, muscle brain, skinny brain, count the calories of your thoughts, funk, Confucius says, like Chinese laxatives, sweet and sour bowel movements, and in this world of stinky memories, shitty futures, 19 now-nows, constipated like the prune juice of the mind, the band, and the tidy bowl of your brain. I said that. I said that.
I would say that was an excellent reading. Here's the thing. Now that I heard you read this, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. Because if you would have had came on an open mic and read this, and I would have not known that it was George Clinton, it sounds a lot like you.
You would have been like, ¿Que sí que?
I would have been like, what the hell is David talking about? All right, so talk to me about it. Like, you know what? So you're saying this was the poem that solidified your path, you're saying, into poetry.
Absolutely. When I was at a very young age, I started typing a one-page political newsletter, just ranting and raving about shit after this poem. And yeah, it lit a fire under me to fight, you know, like, and then I saw, here's what hit me in this poem. My mom had a lot of white shit in the house, right? And I you know, not to sound racist, but she had a lot of paintings, or she had this one gold plate with a like George Washington type dude, you know, with the curly white hair. She had a lot of white people dancing with the white hair and the curls and the, you know, it was all like that that Shakespearean look, whatever, you know. And I realized after that song, right, that she forgot her culture, right? She was so into, she would say something like, here's a famous quote from my mom. When I say, I don't like that, she goes, well, the white people have it. So to her, if white people had it, it made it good, right? And so this, and that's what this poem is about, right? So it's about the brainwash, the people that have been, their mind has been taken over by shit like that. And so it's saying that they are the unflushables. They are the ones that are gonna, that you can't affect them. You are not gonna brainwash these people, and they come in to free you from that. And then he followed up with a I think it was about 2 or 3 minutes of a song that said nothing but think it ain't illegal yet. And I thought that was so dope, you know, like what people didn't understand at that time was the word yet, because it was so scary, right? Because if you really thought about what he said he's saying think now, because at one day it might not be legal to think, but right now you have the chance to think and make changes to stop like a total takeover of your brain. So he was a very alien type poet, right? So it was all psychedelic about, you know, I forgot that he actually did a poetry book also, but yeah, that did it for me. That was it. I had to be and that's why I did political poetry for the majority of my path, you know.
That's a beautiful thing, bro. So I want to take a second and because 2 of our brothers had technical issues and one was saving the world. So I want to welcome Rebel Poet, el legendario from Caguas, Puerto Rico, in the house. Thank you for coming, Rebel.
Peace.
And el número 21 from Jersey, now residing in the Bronx. You know him by many names: the Wizard, El Profe, Rich, my brother.
That is the Independent People's Republic of the Bronx.
Oh, I stand corrected. His mother, my mother, his father, my father, his sister, my sister. Rich Rian, thank you for showing up, bro. Appreciate it.
Yes.
We were talking about the work you do.
We were. I had a newfound respect. I mean, I already respect you, of course, but I had a newfound respect for you because I was like, oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, you know, so thank you for doing what you do. I know that when we were talking about the poem, Rebel was like, I couldn't get past the first sentence of the poem, and he had to read it a couple of times, because we're looking at the title, the pro-mental shit backwash psychosis and enema squad, the dude who chases, and we were like, what the hell did El David just send us? But now
I told you, I warned you before I sent it. I was like,
yeah, he was like, you sure I should read this? And I was like, nah, read it. But again, now after reading it and hearing you read it, right? Because sometimes we read things in our own voices, but you did it beautiful justice. And I could see why it's what, springboarded you into poetry. So shout out to George Clinton for putting you on that path. We're very blessed by your decision to buy that album instead of getting something, from the Copacabana or something like that. So
that's dope too.
What that mean?
Right.
No,
writing.
I love the man. I love the man. I have him on Spotify. I don't have any issues with him. Manolo is the man. What can I say?
Yeah, man.
So with that in mind, now what I would like to hear is your works. Funny thing, two things I wanted to mention. I know a lot of Spanglish speaking Latinx people, but Josiah eats the cake. Not only in his day-to-day conversations with people, but also in his poetics. And that's what connects you guys beautifully. What connects all of us, actually. There was a very wise man in a workshop once who said, use our language because it's important. Write in your language. And that's what actually changed my writing style and actually helped me to put what I had in my mind onto paper, right? So the other thing is that if you hang out with Josiah at a open mic and he's reading, Josiah has, I think it's like a brown, I forgot what it was, hermano. You have like a brown leather book holder or something? Or is it a book bag?
My book bag, my old bolsa, yeah, my bag.
Yeah. And when he goes into his book bag, he doesn't take out notebooks. All his poetry is typed. It's typed. And that's the poetry that literally with a like before computers, and it's beautiful on the page, and that's what I sent you guys. So
that's old school,
Josiah,
that's some Baraka shit right there.
Oh, dude, it's beautiful. I was when I was at Susana's house for La Tortuga Boricua, Josiah is reading, and he goes into the bag and he takes out this water paper, and I'm looking at it. I was like, "That's a beautiful disaster, bro!" And he's just going through these pages like a madman. And it's a beautiful thing. So when you send us the pages, like it really made me smile. I was like, yeah, that's Josiah's work. So thank you for being an amazing poet, but also an artist. Because that's art. So the floor is yours, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you, hermano. Well, using the typewriter is part of my ritual. So this is my next manuscript, by the way, and no, I haven't made copies of it. It's just in my libro. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, the typewriter is part of my creation. It's the rhythm, and again the drum, the repetition. The movement, the clacking, the fact that you can't erase something. You could cross it out, but it's still on the page. It's a trippy thing. So, Mario, am I reading the two poems, or am I reading the one, or how are we doing this?
Read one.
Read one, okay. Well, since we're talking English, I'll do the I don't know, the writing. I'm drinking café with the café con leche with café.
Nice.
It's good. I don't know, Mario, that idea that you mentioned about, writing in your own language, it should be an everyday thing for us, but it's a profound moment when we experience it, because here in La Bahia, in the progressive poetry and literary community, I can't tell you how many times I would go into these predominantly white spaces and read my poetry, and people would love it. They come to me up after me, after the reading, talk to me, maybe 5 or 10 minutes into the conversation. I really love your poetry, but wouldn't it be better if you wrote it in English so people could understand? You know, that kind of pendejada. So we need,
So I'm curious.
Yeah.
What has been your response to that? Because that's kind of been the feedback I've been getting lately. So what's your response to that?
Well, I was a much angrier man back then, so I would fuck off. I mean, literally, it was like your poetry happened to be while I'm reading it, but you know, like, and there was one, but it goes all around. It's like we towards that, like this one old lady was notorious for this shit, man. At this one reading series in Oakland, at Pegasus Books, she would come up and just corner you, and it was always the same complaint. Why don't you write in English? You know, and she was an old lady. So at one point she goes to me, she goes, how would you feel if I wrote all my poetry in Yiddish? And I was like, lady, I think that would be beautiful. Like, I want to hear your poetry. I want you to tell, talk to me in your idioma, talk to me, where it's coming from. But even with that, like, that should be a no-brainer, but we still have to fight for these spaces. Like, that's why we created the reading series here, Speaking Ashalot, because we say at the series at the beginning, decolonized poetic verses, Spanglish poesia, pocho poetics, chismes and courage. Like, that's what we want. But it's ridiculous that in this day and age, we still have to fight for that, and have to sometimes explain to pendejos and pendejas that this is our idioma, So
I want to take a second and shout out Anthony Morales, who would get on me and tell me, why are you translating your poetry on the mic? He was like, I don't give a fuck. They don't understand, that's their business. You speak your truth. And he would be like, speak your truth, bro. Just if they don't get it, they don't get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've had to read and listen to, Americano poetry all this time. It's time to speak our truth. So, I shout out to him for that,
And there's
tell us all the time.
There's layers to that, Mario, as you know, because even like when we're going through the process of publishing, those pendejos and pendejas try and edit us in the publishing process. They try and, like, well, you don't want to alienate your audience, or you don't want to lock out the audience by, like, words. And you're like, I do want this is so no, it goes on a level.
There's Rial always says there's a resistance to that. Speaking in our native tongue is resistance to being colonized. So, so the floor is yours, Josiah.
Okay, so this is a poem about 3 months ago, maybe. Telemundo, you all know Telemundo. Telemundo called the bookstore. One of the producers at Telemundo called the bookstore and asked to talk to me because they were doing a piece, a TV piece about Spanglish. They want to do a Spanglish piece. So being the stone pocho that I am, I went ahead and read Daniela, the producer, this poem, and she hung up on me, and she never called. So I don't know. This is a poem. This is it right here.
I'm laughing because I know the story.
It must be good then.
I don't even think I finished. You just I don't know. Pero this is the truth regardless. I speak Spanglish porque that's what comes out of me boca when I'm asked about this American dream. I speak Spanglish so me future antepasados can understand me. I speak Spanglish porque the timeline told me to. I speak Spanglish because that's the only way I'm going to recognize myself when I look into that smoking mirror. I speak Spanglish porque palabras son colores, and English alone can't color what we are or what we illuminate by being here as beautiful brown people. I speak Spanglish porque I heard it in my mama's womb. I speak Spanglish porque soy Chicano, soy Pocho, soy inheritor of this North American chingadera. I speak English to piss off all those Donald Trump piñatas that are still dangling out there. I speak Spanglish porque aquí y no nos vamos. I speak Spanglish so mi familia can hear me loud and clear from all the way up the block. I speak Spanglish porque I do want to undermine this American empire. I speak Spanglish so that I recognize donde estoy y para donde voy. I speak Spanglish so that Calle 24 will understand me. I speak Spanglish to get that funny monolingual taste out of mi boca. I speak Spanglish porque these canciones are sung on occupied territories. I speak Spanglish porque mi sangre told me to. Cuyulhuacui told me to. La Agua told me to. I speak Spanglish so that you don't have to read those colonized subtitles to understand what I'm saying. I speak Spanglish so that you won't notice me ni de aquí ni de allá accent. I speak Spanglish to infuriate the baptized espíritus still trying to manifest destiny our asses all the way from beyond the grave. I speak Spanglish porque they've hidden our tierra from us with racist concrete and white man terremotos. I speak Spanglish so that mi idioma can cross a border that doesn't exist in the first place. I speak Spanglish porque one day my huesos will be buried right here and I want them to hear the echo.
Okay, muy buenas noches. Nos vemos. My dude, I speak Spanglish porque palabras son colors and English alone can't color what we are or what we illuminate by being here as beautiful brown people. What can I say, bro? This is the reason I fell in love with you. It's the reason why I fell in love with your poetry. Thank you for sharing. Guys, want to say anything? There's nothing to say. Mic drop, walk away, turn it off. I don't know what we do.
That was
This is
dope.
funny.
That was
This is,
dope. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
That was what I was telling you. He
Yeah.
had that rhythm. He had that Last Poet's rhythm. He had that Black Panther repetitive hammer to your head. It was very cool.
Thank
Tell
you.
me that line.
Abs-
Tell me that line again, Mario. The one that you pointed out.
He said, I speak Spanglish porque palabras son colors, and English alone can't color what we are or what we illuminate by being here as beautiful brown people.
Right. So, you know, I've said that, you know, we have to speak our language. You know, that's not something that I came up with on my own. That was something that has been said by various scholars and writers, like Sterling Brown was one of the ones who said that we had to have, you know, we had to stick to the idiom because the idiom is the truth, right? We have a language that speaks a particular truth, and the truth is that all of us are kind of stuck in between these two realities, right? In the Chicano context, that means Aztlan. In the midst of this other thing called America, whatever the hell that is. In Nuyoricanism, that means, you know, folks that are kind of stuck between the island and Nueva York and having to kind of create this other kind of reality. And when we do those things, we have to make a language out of it. But the funny thing about all of that stuff to me is when English, people tell us speak English, write English, do your thing in English. And Americans say this stuff, not understanding that they don't speak English either. Right? Because English doesn't exist in the way that, you know, and I have had the Queen of England on my brain because that's the only thing that's on TV now. There's a guy, there's a crown that is the crown jewel of the crown jewels, the centerpiece of the crown jewels, right? And it's this thing called St. Edward's crown. St. Edward was not strictly speaking, British. He wasn't really English yet either. There was a kind of an identity crisis that England went through right before the England's version of Aegon the Conqueror came along. Before there was Aegon the Conqueror on Game of Thrones, there was a dude named William the Conqueror who came along in 1066 and conquered Anglo-Saxon Britain, or England, I should say, because Britain didn't really exist. The English language was very different then. Why? Because there was no Normandy before that. The Normans came in 1066 and established this thing that they now call England. And then eventually, Wales kind of got conquered, Scotland got conquered, Northern Ireland is kind of still, we're not really conquered, but we're here anyway, kind of shit. And so now there is this queen who wears a crown called St. Edward's crown, who wasn't really English to begin with. So the idea that somebody's going to come along and tell us to speak English when they don't even know what English is and how it is affected by things like conquest, by new people coming in, by new languages being introduced into the lexicon. The King's English is a mix of French and English, the Latinate and the Germanic. So rather than embrace this evolution in language, which is represented in this thing we call Spanglish, which, by the way, there are Taino words in the English language, and there are Spanish borrowed words in the English language. There's English reconstructions in Spanish that don't exist in Spanish. That's linguistic evolution, and that can only happen here because we're here. And so to speak that language out loud is an act of resistance, yes, but it's also a way to remind people that we're present. It's about presence, right? So typewriters are really good about bringing things into solid existence. I understand that part too. Like, it was dope, brother. I got mad love for you, and that resistance needs to continue. I'm with it.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on one. I want to touch on one more line here, and then we'll move on to El David, because it stuck out for me. Because as Boricuas, and being Nuyorican, a lot of times we think about the diaspora from our aspect, right? But we forget. I honestly, for a while, I was like, oh, there's more diasporas, because we're, I'm Boricua, so I'm only thinking about La Isla. But you have a line here that says, I speak Spanglish so that you won't notice me de aquí, ni de allá. Ni de aquí, ni de allá.
That's kind of,
and I had a beautiful conversation about a year and a half ago with Violeta Orozco, shout out to her, about this topic. And can you touch more on that from the point of being from the Mexican diaspora?
Well, as Profe mentioned it earlier, that idea, and I see that connection too with the Nuyorican familia, where, like, for the Chicano, there's Aslan and there's this United States, right? Or there's home and there's where we are. So, and then for familias that come here to Califas or some other part of los Estados Unidos, there's this place and then there's Mexico, or there's, El Salvador or Guatemala. So that term, ni de aquí, ni de allá, neither from here nor there, it's like this, it's a very, like, universal thing for all of us to feel that way and to experience that. So El Profe mentioned it too, with the folks not in the island and over here too. So that notion is like, that goes deep to us, man, because that's like that describes us in a lot of ways. We're neither here nor there. So it's like a profound phrase that, like, I don't know. I've never heard something that, like, I've connected with as far as, like, describing our situation. That's not to say that we don't create home where we are, but we are like the Mexica, the Aztecas, our ancestors, they went to the Valley of Mexico from Aztlan. We're a nomadic people. We're traveling people. And then from coming to Aztlan to the Valley of Mexico, where Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan, you know, and all the cities were formed, then, you know, we came back over here, you know, so we got that travel thing to us. There's that, but through the traveling, we do lose a little bit here and a little bit there, and we're not anywhere, but we're here. You know, it's a trip. It's an interesting, simple phrase that is actually describes a lot. You know.
Yeah, and I think when you're not home, right, whatever home to you is, I think that's how everybody feels. You know, I think Josiah, thank you. What can I say, bro? I really appreciate you and your work. All right, LW, what you got for us?
Before I do, I want to say, so I wasn't, I don't know, I mean, I think you mentioned in the bio, but I was in a bomba group called Segunda Quimbamba, and the director, Juan Cartagena, used to say that all the time. And he actually named his second album, Ni de Aquí Ni de Allá. For New Yorkers, he meant something different though, but it's interesting to hear the similarities. But like when you're in he's from New Jersey, but so that's a whole different thing, right? So he experienced not being Puerto Rican enough when he was in the island, not being Rican without the Puerto when he was in New York because he was from New Jersey. And then when he so he's not either not Rican enough or when, so for instance, when we go to Puerto Rico, I'm considered a gringo, right? Because I don't speak the language fluently. I'm not Puerto Riqueño enough when I'm down there. So, and then for Juan Cartagena and some of New Yorkers here, we struggle with a lot because we're a mix of Africano blood. And I'm not going to say everybody, but most of us have, as I believe it was 93% of indigenous people, excuse me, of Puerto Ricanos have indigenous or African blood in them, right? So, so we are very diverse, right? So for him, when he used that term, ni de aquí ni de allá, it meant so much to us because we were such a sancocho, you know. So yeah, I want to touch on that because it reminded me of Juan Cartagena and those beautiful bomba days where I would sing very off key to those drums. So for me, okay, I and then I know I'm going kind of left from my normal type of poetry for a few reasons. One, my mom's not doing well. She's in transition, so she's not going to be with us soon. So I figured let me do a poem for her, and then I wanted to do something that made me happy, so I don't cry too much tonight. So and I am like I said, I am very hip hop bred. So I'm gonna go there with that one. So this one's called "I Come From," and that's actually from my book, Where I'm From Now. I come from tumbao and diriba, guiro y maracas, beats and breaks. I come from manteca y corojo, blood sacrifices and homegrown temples. I come from boogie down blocks, Zulu hip hop and outlaw cuts. I come from rebel banderas, wild style bombing and Upper West Side gigantes. I come from leyendas urbanas that scratch history out of impoverished brick enclosures. I come from wax and vinyl cuts, New Yorican poets and hood fab hustles. I come from bodegas and botanicas, from talking drums and enchanted feet. I know the ancestors like the back of my hand because I come from babalaos who etched their history there. I come from rhythm and blues, jíbaro décimas and canciones encantadas del coquí. I come from struggle, survival, and phoenix risen faith. I come from Arawak gold, skin that drips the sun. Understand, I come from pure magic.
So if you didn't know who El David was, there you go. Thank you, brother. You know, I've had an opportunity to read your work, and you know, there's when we were talking on your show, you know, we have this connection because we come from you were raised in the Bronx, right? Also,
absolutely.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Bronx, and Bronx, so and the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Yeah,
yeah. So you know, this is who we are as a people. You know, this could be actually any of us in this room. Any of us who grew up in in the Bronx or in Brooklyn, and what I really appreciate is you bringing us in to see a closer view of who you are. This is very similar to my soy poem, to my am poem, I am, but you bring a lot into here. You're not just bringing, el barrio, but you're bringing spirituality, you're bringing, your music, you're bringing, I love, I come from leyendas urbanas that scratch history out of impoverished brick enclosures. We know those, we know those people. We know those titeres, we know those people that ran those numbers and jumped out those windows and those stories and Ralphie's and those urban leyendas, right? So
man.
so thank you for that. And we share like I said, me and my sister are on this path. So anytime I see touches of the spirituality that connects us, not only to Borinquen but to our ancestors, it's always beautiful. You catch me quick, when we start talking about ancestors and stuff like that. Again, so if you didn't know who El David was, that's his introduction to who he is as a poet. And it's true, it's pure magic. And if you have an opportunity, get his latest book. I have it over there. I don't have it next to me. Growing Up Rican, I think it was, right? MW?
That was the last one. Yeah, my new one is Where I'm From, but me and you, we clicked on the Growing Up Rican and yours.
Yeah.
I wasn't lying, I spoke about it when I interviewed you. We spoke offline.
Please.
Spoke offline. Dude, I'm serious. Your poetry is some of it's my favorite poetry right now. And
I appreciate that.
And we clicked, right? Because it was so similar. Like and I had to send you that book because I was like, dude. So your book was what I wanted. I wish I said in my book. You know what I mean?
Oh, stop it.
I was like, yeah, nah.
This
absolutely.
is about you, bro.
Absolutely. I know. Nah, it's never. See, and I can never. Me. I like to. I promote wherever I can, man. If you a beautiful soul, if your work is great, that's the whole. Me and my wife, that's what we about, man. We about, like I said, what moves the heart and soul. We want to promote that out there, and you,
absolutely,
the heart and soul, brother. So I don't care if it's about me right now. I gotta give props to
But
beautiful.
But that's exactly what you did in this poem. You moved. I think poetry like this calls people. Because this is our stories, right? This is what it's about. When we write like this without too many metaphors, just straight to the point, I think that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
So, thank you. Thank you for that. All right, so we're gonna keep it moving. If none of the guys have anything to say or comment, Josiah, I would love to hear that poem, bro. Because that's the next poem is actually one of my favorite poems that you read.
Yeah.
So.
And this was the one you actually wanted me to read at Susana's house, and I didn't get it until after I understood. Yeah, so it makes me happy I get to read it for you again. But this was written during the beginning of the pinche pandemico, just to kind of remind me, we started like the good old days of the pandemico.
Oh, the good old days of the pandemic.
Everybody was just scared shitless and staying away from each other. But I missed it because it closed down. North Richmond barrios closed down. There was my cultura. So I just sort of wrote this poem to gently remind myself. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? ¿Qué somos? Pues somos starlight that was left in the glove box of Xochipilli's yellow El Camino. Somos nopales espinas that pricked our tata abuela's sueños of living here in los United States. Somos scared, scarred childhood cruzando la frontera momentos that are tattooed forever on el cucuy's left arm. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos huesos that the jaguar in el cielo is gnawing on right now. Somos a conejo that you can see quite clearly on Cuyushhuacui when you look up at the night sky. Somos the torn out páginas of a history book that nobody was going to read anyway. Somos the candelas still burning on the corner ofrendas back in our old neighborhoods. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos the smell of burnt tortilla. Somos frijoles that have been soaking in a bowl of water since the beginning of this quinto sol. Somos North American pesadillas stuffed inside of Donald Trump piñata. Somos a pile of huesos out on la frontera that no one is ever gonna find. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos africano features hidden behind Zapatista bigotes. Somos africano rhythms played off of Vaquita's jawbone. Somos the broken taillights of a .com conquistador's car as he drives over shell mounds on his way to the next century's pinche chingadera. Somos the sweet taste of nopal syrup and amaranth cakes, which the conquistadors mistook for the taste of human flesh and blood. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos a frontera folktale about the time El Diablo came to the pachanga dressed in the skin of a handsome blue-eyed white man with the feet of a chicken. Somos the black and red scribbles inside of Viejito's last dream that Mictlán Tecutli is watching like a telenovela right now. Somos a white cowboy hat on the Tigres del Norte album cover. Somos the smell of death quietly emanating off the papayas in front of the mercados around 16th Street. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? Somos a 500-year-old joyride in the blue-eyed demigods ramfla that we stole back at the gas station with the bones of the 1,000 conquistadors who we killed at La Noche Triste in the trunk, man. Somos ancestors who are children. Somos the severed parts of our own goddesses. Somos gods who leave their own body parts behind to help create time. Somos the wrinkles of our abuelita's skin. Somos the flayed skin of Shepitotec. Somos Ashayacat's Palacio, rising up in this day and age out of Mexico City concrete. Guess somos mi gente. Somos words that white America can pronounce. Somos our own mispronunciations. Somos our own mistranslations. Somos our own migration. Somos our own balazos. Somos our own milagros. Somos the last box of brown Ben Davis pants buried in the terremoto earthquake after the big one finally hits San Pancho. Somos the smoke in Chavela Vargas's throat cuando she starts to sing. Somos mariposas de humo that disappears. They flutter across that pinche border. Somos the first drops of divina sangre that Huitzilopochtli shed in defense of his mama. Somos brown-skinned children put in American cages left to die. Somos wooden prayers set under serpent skirt night skies. Somos Spanish surnames and the last known European address of Doña Malitzin. Somos Spanglish speaking cempasúchils, watered with agua that comes from ni de aquí ni de allá. ¿Qué somos, mi gente? ¿Qué somos?
Thank
You know what?
Josiah.
He sounds like my father-in-law, but if my father-in-law was a really cool poet. It's so dope.
Catalina's gonna throw you with something, bro.
She's gonna agree with me. She's gonna say.
That's the sweetest thing anyone said to me in a long time, brother.
See, there you go.
I always, I go back to being from New York and, being from the New Rican movement and, listening to Boricua stories, right? And listening to, once in a blue moon, we'll listen to, a Colombian poet, or we'll listen to a Dominican poet, or a poet from La Americas, and I always get excited because we could speak about Puerto Rico and our journey, and we could speak about Coquín and Yunque and our travels and the magic of being Boricua, but when I start hearing about other culturas, and when writers put that in their poetry, to me is I'm not the guy who's gonna go, what does that mean? When I'm done, I'm gonna go research. I want to know what, these Mexican words are, because Mexico to me has always been magical, and you carry your cultura really strong in your poetry. You have some poems that are just like so powerful and so beautiful, describing your culture. Like, I think it's like the second time, and if you can, you speak about La Noche Triste, and I know it means there's a significance to that. Would you mind touching on that real quick?
Well, it's funny because that talking about our narratives being taken over, but La Noche Triste, basically there was a point in the you don't want to call it the I hate when the historians refer to it as the conquest, right? It's basically an invasion by the Spaniards of the Mexica. But they went in there, and another historical misinterpretation was that the Mexica thought that the conquistadors were gods. They didn't. They knew that they were men the whole time. But they didn't. They got into the Mexica city, Tenochtitlan, and there was a point when the Mexica were like, "Fuck this! We ain't having these motherfuckers in here anymore. This is time to go." And basically, it was during I can't remember who the ritual was for. The Mexica basically had a ritual momento in the main plaza of Tenochtitlan, and Cortés had to leave the city because he was going to go intercept a group of other conquistadors that were sent by Spain to arrest him. So Cortés left the city, left his main man in charge, this one general, who then proceeded to massacre all the Mexica that were in ritual, right in the middle of the ritual. And at that point, the Aztecas, the Mexica, were like, "This is it. These motherfuckers got to go," So the Spaniards got wind of that, and this was June 30th, 1520. The Españoles knew that their time was up in the city, and they tried to sneak out in the middle of the night. And the Mexica city was like this beautiful, dreaming city that was in the middle of the Lake Texcoco, and the only way to exit was these long bridges. So the conquistadors are sneaking out with all their gold and all the shit that they stole, and then the Mexica descend on them and attack and take out huge casualties. There's a number that says that there was 1,000 conquistadors killed, but the number's a lot higher because they basically the conquistadors had enslaved Africans fighting for them. They had other tribes that so a lot of other folks were killed, but the history book mentions them. So this night, Cortés had come back, and the Mexica have driven them out. They've lost, the conquistadors lost 1,000. They're leaving the city. They're coming out. There's this big story about Cortés like weeping that night against this one tree as he sees his army coming out of the water with like their gold lost. And apparently Cortés lost a finger somewhere along the way on that night too. I don't know who's got the finger, but props to whoever's got the finger. And
I got it right here, papi. It's all good.
Someone got the finger.
Somebody got the finger. You know what I mean? We good. We good.
They're holding it somewhere.
Rich, that was awesome, man.
That night became known in history as La Noche Triste, the sad night. Which to me, bro, any night you kill 1,000 conquistadors is not.
That's a happy night, man. That's a good night.
And even up to like
Absolutely.
5 years ago or 10 years ago, Mexico was even referring to that night as La Noche Triste in the history books. Finally, Mexico made an official change, and they actually refer to that night now as La Noche Feliz, the happy night. But it was known for years as La Noche Triste, you know, not just in Europe, but like in Mexico and other parts of Latin America. So that always struck me as particularly strange, you know, like these images of Cortés. And apparently there was this giant tree that he wept against, you know, and that tree got like a plaque on it. And it was like kind of like a tourist thing in Mexico until somebody burned it down.
Absolutely.
Right.
As they should have.
Nice.
As they should have. Yeah, so that's
is,
the Triste, you know, which was quite
I
a happy.
appreciate that. That is to say that I personally appreciate it when artists use their culture in their work, and you do it really beautifully. So muchas gracias, mi hermano.
Can I just
for reading your work.
say, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead, puppy.
Can I just say, I feel bad for white people. Let me tell you why I feel bad for white people, right?
I don't, but go ahead.
Particularly white. No. Let me tell you why, because I think it's a big deal. Like particularly white critics and white women, like the ones who approach you at your readings. White people generally want us to write in English, you know, and just kind of go with the flow and explain things in the poems and break up our flow and translate shit. You know, they don't ask us, they expect us, in fact, to understand various kinds of historical references, right? That have to do with Greeks and Anglo-Saxon shit and French history and this history and the other history. That's just expected. Well, you know, you're here now in the United States. We're looking at world literature, which often means European literature. And you're just expected to know these things. Whereas you have you'll have a reference to like manteca, like a corojo, right? Or you'll have a word like babalao, or you'll have this reference to the noche triste or noche feliz, or whichever noche it is, and all these different words in either Caló or Spanish or Mexican Spanish or English or Spanglish or whichever word it is. There's so much history just in one word, man. Manteca de Coro is a big deal to look at and I'm talking about David's poem, right? That, you know, to look into what palm oil is and what religion that's a piece of, right? And what that means to the people who do that, right? How this history informs you know, the Mexican American experience today. Not to mention other Latinos, like when we name things, like the names, you know, it matters what you call something, right? So like white people don't get to experience that shit. They don't get to go into these poems and look at these histories and say, wow, how deep, oh, how amazing, oh, what references to history? Oh, I didn't know that shit. Wow, that's something. Curiosity seems to be dead among a lot of these white critics, man. Like that's por eso que, you know, lo siento mucho por ello, porque son unos mal informados, pero it is what it is, I suppose. But all we can do is do the work that we do and just hope that they will come along for the ride. We constantly address them in our work. We're like, you know, I come from this, I come from blah, 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 and that's an address to the white folks, man. It's like, yo, come on in. You know, the water's fine. We got Carne Puerco in the back here. We good. You know what I'm saying? But they don't accept the invite. I'm just like, yo, I gotta send a doodle poll or some shit. Anyway, yeah.
They don't hear that. They hear come to the dark side.
Yeah.
I come to the dark side. Well, you know, I went
Or
to
the
I went to a private school when I was a kid. I went to a private school that freaked out when all the brown people showed up, man, because they had this little enclave in this mostly, you know, this mostly white neighborhood in New Jersey, which I argue, like most people think that Jersey is separate from New York. But the thing is, like, you know, when you're from the South or you're from the West or whatever, New Jersey, New York, all that shit is kind of blends together. Especially like my hood was, you know, I think I love the Bronx as much as I do because this shit reminds me of Patterson, right? But in either case, like, you know, I feel like that little enclave, they got real nervous when we showed up. And they were nervous that we were going to start marrying their daughters and the sons were going to start liking Latina women and, you know, and start speaking Spanglish and Spanish and stuff like that. And you know what? They were right, because that's exactly what happened. You know, some of the white girls ended up with like Colombian dudes and shit. And you'd be like, oh, all right. We gonna make this diaspora happen, baby. One way or the other.
Absolutely. I've been to
Marty, I gotta chop it up with Rich.
yeah, no, definitely.
Come on down, brother. I'm in the Bronx now, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. We go down the street to Ellie's, man. We'll go to Ellie's Diner and shit. We good.
Yes.
Absolutely. And he lives in a really nice neighborhood too, with a couple of diners in the area. So, you know,
My
it's in the
neighborhood has
boondocks,
the second oldest Macy's in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We got the Macy's in Parkchester. I'm among all the brick buildings.
I know where that's at, because we when we and my wife were looking for apartments, we were near that Macy's. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, Rich is about
it's beautiful.
Rich is about maybe a 10-minute walk from South of France. Yeah. So.
Oh, word?
Oh yeah, I walked right past it the other day. I was
Nice.
like, "Oh shit, David's here." Nice.
Yeah. Okay, mi gente. So with that, we're gonna bring El David up so he can read his second poem, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So.
All right. So yeah, it's a good way to wrap, because I'm gonna try to get through this. All right. I love you, Mama. This is for you. Like I said, she's in transition, so I wanted to do one final. Whew. All right. Mama, you were my universe. After bidding farewell to my celestial home and choosing your temple to rebirth. Perfection was not in the spaces between rich and poor. It was in the heart that beat lullabies to me as memories of utopia faded to the new unknown. You comfort me in your labored womb, relocated vital organs to make room for the long-awaited son you desperately desired. Son of a man you despised, yet you did not see his darkness in me. You saw the last verse of God's poem to you, and I saw the first verse in God's poem to me. Epic poetry, imbued in love, though adrift above troubled water. Mommy, our life was not all flower showers and fragrant paths. We had little to claim, hardship and pain, and I place no blame on you. You, forever a shrine, revered matriarch. All that I am are blossom seeds of you. Living your life, surviving your struggles is only possible for the courageous, the strong. Your emotions were not tattooed on your sleeve, but your love was rivers long. Your strength was made monument before my eyes each time you made clothing and meals appear. Your hands were made healer each time you wiped my dirty tears and kissed the pain away. Mommy, you sheltered me from insecurity with masks of certainty, while poverty pressed against the back of your tongue. What I am trying to tell you may sound cliche. It may be cliche, but also simple as the raindrop that holds majestic universes within. Simply, but deeply, Mommy, I appreciate you. Mommy, I love you. I did it.
Thank you for being vulnerable with us, bro. Like, That's all he does in this book,
Yeah.
by the way. That's all he does in this book. When I read this, I had to stop halfway because it was just like you went to a really like tender, spot, and we've spoken, and I've been very open with the familia in this chat group of my relationship with my mom, and I appreciate you for sharing that. Yeah, man. Blessings to your mom. I'll have
Thank
her
you,
in
man.
our prayers.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely, bro.
This is exactly what Cafre con leche is, to build community, to be vulnerable. That's what the Titeres poets are about. There's been many times when I chopped it up with Isa and Bird and cried, ugly cried, where Bird has, poured his heart, where we've all sat and supported each other, and not tore each other down for showing the positive feminine energies that we have, right? And being able to share that openly with brothers and sisters without being ridiculed. We come from a generation that if we read that to our boys back in the day, we would have got torn down, but thank you for
What shit
sharing
is
that.
that?
Come again?
Yo, what kind of shit is that, yo?
Yeah, what kind of shit
Too
is that,
soft.
right?
It's too soft.
I will say that it is my honor to call both you and Josiah my brothers and my friends.
Absolutely.
Thank you for spending time with us. Again, Rebel Poet, mi hermano, I love you. Thank you for being here. Rich, thank you for joining us. Isa, thank you for doing such a good job of holding us down with the technology and for being patient with me and not yelling at me when it comes to technology.
A lot of
It
patience.
requires a lot of patience and love. Yes. So,
La
con eso, mi
tecnología.
gente, if do you guys want to plug something? I know El David has an open chopping it up. I think it's with in
Chant.
Goma, if I'm not
Yeah.
with
No, John Chance Acevedo.
with Chance,
Yeah,
with Chance.
yeah. Coming up in October 21st, I believe it is. I had a
Nice.
lot of wine tonight, so that I might be wrong. And my last book was Where I'm From, and the one you showed up there was Growing Up Rican.
Excellent.
El David, when did you get published by Flower Song?
I got published by Flower Song last year.
Oh wow! Oh, okay.
Last year, yeah. Flower Song Press, beautiful publishing company. Yeah.
Well, there's a Chicano Puerto Rican connection right there.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Oh!
absolutely. You know what? You want to talk about? I don't want to. I know everybody wants to go to bed.
No, you good.
I'm
Go
good.
ahead.
I ain't going
Yo,
to bed, not anytime soon.
So I spoke. I did when I was in my activist times. I did a lot of research with that, right? With Mexican and Arawak connection, and there's one book. There's one book in the Fifth Avenue Library. You can't take it out. It's the only one left in the world because the rest were destroyed, and it's called On Trail of the Arawak, right?
Mhm.
And it breaks down the walk of the oh, he knows that, what I'm talking about. Yeah. So
Yeah,
they actually if you look at the Olmecs and the heads that were found in Puerto Rico, almost identical. The game that they played, it was only in two places. Where you throw the ball through the hoop, was only in Mexico and Puerto Rico, and with the Arawaks, not just Puerto Rico. I shouldn't say that because actually the Arawaks were all up the East Coast. Also, the maraca was only in two places, Mexico, what's now Mexico, and Borinquen. So I was talking to Bobby Gonzalez, some of you might know, who is an indigenous historian, and he was like, man, I've been made that connection. So it was like that just validated everything I was talking about. So also the only thing is the ball that was played in Puerto Rico was made of rubber, The ball that was made in what is now Mexico was rubber, but there was no rubber in Puerto Rico. The rubber only came from where the Aztecas were, and that was when Bobby was telling me that. I didn't even know this part, but he was like, that was the key for him that tied it all together. So there was that book that showed the trail that even went from a straight over the water to the island, all the way down to Mexico, this trail of Arawak descendants, where the two natives of those indigenous places are actually related. They didn't just trade, but if you look at the DNA of them, they share DNA. So if you do that 23andMe and all, whatever you want to do, you're gonna find that people with Puerto Rican descent also have South American descent, and vice versa. I just want to share that because nobody talks about that.
That's beautiful, man.
And that's one to grow on.
Big
Josiah. Hay una mezcla ahí de mexicano y puertorriqueño right there on the camera. I'm looking.
Look at how beautiful
this mezcla. Hey, what up, kid? What's up?
He's living the best life.
Yo, truly.
I want a bottle.
We brought the cafres, he brought the leche.
Yeah, that's right.
Cafre con leche.
So, you know what? If you put the word together, it's mejoriqueño, so he is better.
Oh, wow. Look at you. That goes on a shirt, bro.
Wow.
That goes on a shirt.
Yeah,
Josiah, I wanted to really quick tell. So again, I had the amazing pleasure of stalking Josiah on La Misión, taking a bunch of pictures while he was across the street talking to Tom, and he saw me. But then I went into the store and was completely blown by the amazing work that Medicina for Nightmares is doing. So touch on that really quick. Tell us what's going on with Speaking Acholot, and we'll wrap it up with that.
Well, the bookstore is doing its thing. It's a portal, like we say. We open it up and people come through and they come out of it and they come into it. And it's beautiful, man. Next month, we got like 22 events in the Galleria. Speaking Acholot just happened last night. This is the monthly series we do. So that was beautiful. We had a sister, Diana Tinoco from Mexico, who just moved here. She like a graphic design artist. She makes these really beautiful, like handcrafted poems. So she read. A dear Chicana named Amanda Muñez read. So it's beautiful because we're making that transition now from the hybrid. You know, we've been doing hybrid events since last year. The majority in the beginning, of course, everyone was zooming in from the Zoom Mundo. And now we're getting more people live in the Galleria. You know, we're still being very responsible with masks and everything, but it's nice to see, because for me, poetry's real life community. And this is beautiful, pero, you know, I would much rather see a real Mario. So that, you know, we're holding it down. Things are good. Tomorrow is the opening of Josue Rojas' show. He's this amazing Salvadorian painter. And then all of 24th Street is going to go crazy because it's Mexican Independence Weekend. And there's all these vendors out there. It's going to be a beautiful day on 24th. But
nice.
Yeah, look forward to the day when the Titeres will be here in real life. We'll have a reading, and y'all could just bring some sleeping bags and crash in the Galleria. But, you
don't put us to the test. It'll happen.
Here it is, man, for real. But
I'm gonna go down there with my wife. We're gonna smoke in the closet there with you.
Word.
Word. But next week, we want to say I'm very excited because we're a bunch of the Área Bahía poets and some of our LA familia. We're going to Tijuana. We got asked to read at the Caracol International Poetry Festival in Tijuana, so we're reading there. San Diego, and reading at Cafre Diluba in Barrio Logan, one of the oldest barrios in LA, right up the street from Chicano Park. So we're reading there on the 22nd, the 23rd, we're driving in at Tijuana and reading in Tijuana, and then the 24th, we're driving to Rosarito and reading there. I'm excited, man. It's the first poetry festival I've ever read at in Mexico, so it's a big deal. I'm excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Rich?
Bueno, mis hijos, for those of you who are in the New York area on the anniversary of El Grito de Lares, which is September the 23rd. El Grito de Lares, of course, being the independence movement in Puerto Rico. 1868, we was chopping heads off and shit. It was a beautiful thing back then. September 23rd, we are going to be at the Mecca. We're going to be at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, celebrating a book called Receta by this dude named Mario Jose Pagan Morales. I don't know if you know him, pero they say his work is good. So I'll be hosting that, and it's a show called Generaciones, multicultural reading of Familia at the New York. So we're gonna have Destiny Padilla, Catherine Benitez, Thomas Fucoloro, Johnny Rose, Rebel Poet, and our answer, this generation's answer to the impresarios of old. Papo Swiggity Santiago will be there, and I will be hosting it. So you should, if you're in New York or New Jersey or Califas or Chicago or wherever you happen to be, get there on the 23rd. I know you're reading in Tijuana, Josiah, pero if it's not one thing, it's a reading in Tijuana. Get to New York, get to the Lower East Side, to Loisaida, right? The spiritual home of the New York movement. And get familiar with these folks. The flyer is online. It's on Mario's page. It will be on the Titeres page at some point. Yeah, yo, it's gonna be some shit. And yeah.
Man, that's beautiful. We got that guy Mario's poetry book here at the store.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
Great, fantastic. I feel like we can. I feel like there's potential in that brother to do. I don't know, readings with community, bi-coastal readings even. I think there's a lot that's possible there. So Mario's a good dude. Don't tell him that, because después se pone, después se pone muy, ya tú sabes, pero bueno. Yeah, that's my brother. I love him a lot, and we're gonna go do this thing. I mean, we've done a book party already, but to do it at the Mecca and to do it like you said, the world is kind of opening up now. We'll do it, we'll do it in a manner that we can that is safe. Pero it's a beautiful thing to be able to see people in flesh and blood again. So yeah, 23rd, yo. Vaya. That's a Friday.
Thank you so much for those kind words, Rich. Yeah, word. Well, I won't be working, but I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Thank you for for Catalina and bringing the baby around.
Yeah.
Blessings to you folks. Mi gente, muy buenas noches. Thank you for coming. The first of many Cafre con Leches.
Cafre con leche.
Thank you, my brother.
Cafre con
For your work.
leche. Cafre
Josiah,
con
thank
leche.
you. Y nos vemos. Muy buenas noches.
Buenas noches, familia.